Hello, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is ADHD Chat with Dr. G, a show designed to make the world safe for ADHDers. I'm told that I don't really need to introduce myself every time, so we'll skip that. This is the third episode in a series about women and ADHD, women and little girls and females and all that stuff. Anyway, because a lot of times they get short shrift. Historically, people have thought of ADHD as a male problem because of all the hyperactive little boys around who got a lot of attention for throwing temper tantrums in class and tipping over furniture and all that other stuff. Girls, women tend to not be as demonstrative in general. Hyperactivity is relatively less likely in women and girls. And the diagnostic categories, if you're familiar with the diagnoses of ADHD, it's not just one thing. There are three different subtypes. There's hyperactive type, which was what most little boys probably get diagnosed with. There's inattentive type, which is you're just sitting there quietly, not paying attention to a thing in the world, and have problems that way, usually in school. And then the other one is combined type, which means you got a little bit of both things. Combined type is relatively less frequently diagnosed. But anyway, so girls tend to be diagnosed with inattentive ADHD. They tend to be diagnosed later than little boys because little boys tear up things when they're hyperactive, and little girls just kind of sit there and, they're thinking about, I don't know, unicorns and rainbows and that sort of stuff. And it's I get a little background noise. I hope that's not bothering anybody, but anyway, here I go. ADHD in little girls and women tends to be more emotional dysregulation problems. Sometimes we're calling it rejection sensitive dysphoria. That's a new thing coming out. Sometime I'm going to do a thing about all the names that people give, little deviations from what's been in the diagnostic literature. Anyway, and so the first thing we talk, rejection sensitive dysphoria. It is your skin is so thin that anything anybody says that isn't absolutely a compliment is perceived as a criticism, and it is the rejection sensitive dysphoria. Is that the same thing? Probably, but it just has the notion that you're super sensitive to criticism, and it is really amazing how sensitive some people are to criticism. And the problems you have with that is that it is, things that most people wouldn't think of as criticisms are perceived as criticisms. And the rejection, nobody likes me, or, well, you can't talk to me like that. The anger or the withdrawal and that sort of thing. And it can, it really causes difficulties in all, well, it causes real difficulties in the family, especially if the parents are not exactly up to snuff on ADHD. When I was a parent of young children, we didn't know anything about ADHD. It hadn't even been invented yet, or it hadn't been named yet, I guess is more appropriate. So we didn't know what we were dealing with, when we were scared to death that we were raising a bunch of kids who would rob banks and sell drugs on street corners and all that sort of thing. Not really an issue, but it could have been. Anyway, so re, well, let's just say emotional dysregulation is what it's called more commonly in the, at least in the diagnostic manuals. And that just means not having very good control over emotions. When you're ADHD and your neurotransmitters are all out of whack, it's uncomfortable. And plus, as an ADHDer, you're in a setting, usually a school, that wasn't designed for you. It was designed for super neurotypicals, people who can sit still for 6 hours and pay attention, which is obviously not ADHD, and I'm not even sure it's anybody. But uh, that's why we have a lot of troubles with rejection sensitivity, because basically ADHDers get more criticism than neurotypical kids. Somebody's always telling them that to sit still, to quit, to start paying attention, to get their work done. I've forgotten what it. One I used to tell everybody that ADHDers, the research suggests they get like 70 critical comments every day. Well, now we see that, and they get 20,000 more criticisms than neurotypical kids. Anyway, either way, it's not a very comfortable way to live, and it means that you may misread some things, but you're getting a lot of criticism, and it's not easy to live with. And when one of those serious things you got to watch out for with kids is that they start becoming alienated and give up. You know, oh, I'm not going to do this. They're not going to. I can't do it right anyway, and da 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 da. All the alienated, isolated kids that um, feel like failures or are angry at the way they're treated, or all of that stuff. Okay, the emotions typically, what we're talking about, are fairly intense. They are hard to regulate. They get out of control. I mean, girls, initially not so much, but then they get to be adolescents. Then it becomes more intense. The emotions become more intense and hard to regulate. They can't stop themselves, and it's not a temper tantrum, but it can be, feeling rejected, feeling nobody loves me, all those sorts of things, and it is routinely hard to regulate. It is hard to to attend to and stop yourself. I mean, we teach people how to do that all the time in psychotherapy, but for kids, it's harder. I mean, they're really revved up, and all of a sudden they're supposed to be calm, uh, and it's hard to achieve. Now, the side effect, or one of the side problems of this, is that emotional dysregulation can sometimes be mistaken for a mood disorder or even a borderline personality disorder. Now, a mood disorder, that's just a fancy way of talking about different kinds of depression. And sometimes when people are real depressed and have given up on themselves, uh, they look kind of depressed, but it's a different mechanism. I mean, I don't know how many people I have, especially adults, that I've evaluated who come in and they've been treated for depression for 20 or 30 years. They're on the maximum dose of antidepressants they can get on, and still not doing any good. Well, amazing what switching their medication to something that's appropriate for ADHD will do for them. It is really a huge improvement, and a lot of times in my practice, it would be I'd come in, the family would, or the parents would show up, want me to evaluate their child, and then after I evaluated the child, the one of them would say, he's an awful lot like you, or she's an awful lot like you. And then I end up getting to evaluate uh, one of the parents as well. And more frequently, it's a genetic uh, disorder. And so frequently, yeah, the parent are also ADHD. And sometimes they're in a lot worse shape than the child. So that's an interesting thing that used to frequently happen in my practice, and it wasn't even, it was so frequent that it wasn't even unusual, and we didn't. Oh my God, did you believe that kid had it too? I mean, that dad had it too, or the mom had it too. Anyway, so the problem, so mood disorders, depression particularly. I mean, a lot of times it'll be mistaken for that. The other one is the more borderline personality disorders are extreme. Okay, personality disorders are harder to work with therapeutically than pretty much any other diagnosis. Most anxiety disorders are scared of everything. Depression, obsessive disorders think they're not worth anything, but they all think the world is right and they're wrong. Personality disorders tend to think they're right and the whole world is wrong, especially borderlines. Borderlines, if you see one in your office, they are characterized by figuring out ways to set themselves up for failure in pretty much every avenue of life. Um, Relationships, substance use, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a drink, that sort of stuff. But they lose control of that, and they have all kinds of problems and do well. Any major area of life, they're going to have some difficulties, and they're very hard to work with, and they're very hard to uh, get them to improve. Okay, so you get called about a borderline personality disorder, you're going to have a hard time finding a therapist. You're going to have a hard time finding anybody who thinks that you can improve. And of course, it's the wrong diagnosis. So that's an added problem. Now, one of the other things that happens, or is a part of this whole thing, is that societal expectations, basically. Males get more leave to be boisterous and loud and that sort of stuff. Ladies, gentle, are supposed to be a little more reserved and a little less demanding of attention for whatever reason. So a lot of times you have problems. Problem is that people start feeling guilty, and a lot of times the parents start feeling guilty because mostly because everybody's telling them that they're doing a lousy job of parenting their child. But the role expectations for females, for girls, and women in general are to be more feminine and ladylike. And if you're rough and tough, there's probably a problem. Anyway, so ADHD is a big enough problem if you know what's going on. If you have troubles recognizing what's going on, it's an even bigger problem. If you go down the wrong direction, I've been on antidepressants for 10 years, slows everything down and makes it harder for you to get to where you need to go as far as treatment is concerned. That brings up another point, is what are the things that help? Okay, well, there are a lot of things that really help uh, with the emotional dysregulation thing. And one of them is just meditation. Okay, now, back when I started out, if you said meditation to people, you got a lot of facial tics and, you know, but really, it's, if you think of it as just a way of learning to regulate your emotions, your arousal level, that sort of thing, it is can be very helpful and give you a lot of relief. Um, Matter of fact, most people in my line of work do some kind of meditation rather, or self hypnosis all the time. Uh, the good thing is, if you're seeing a lot of patients that are you're working with meditation or hypnosis, every time they go into a meditative state, you go into one too, even if you're the one talking them into it. But that's so that really is helpful. I mean, I highly recommend that basically for everybody. The interesting thing with the meditation, relaxation training, uh, biofeedback, or whatever you want to call, it's learning to calm yourself down, calm your physiology down, and pretty much every culture, every society on the planet has a way of doing that. But of course, not everybody does it. But probably the world would be probably a nicer place to be in if everybody did. So, meditation or relaxation training or self hypnosis, whatever you want to call it, but taking yourself 10 or 15 minutes a couple of times a day to just kind of let your body calm down. Some things that help are being outdoors, unless it's like today, which is 110 degrees or so in the shade, and that probably is not going to help your meditation. But generally, being in nature is relaxing to most people and is helpful. And then coaching. Coaching is different from psychotherapy. It's a little more, it comes out of the positive psychology world and has to do with um, the person directing it is the person we used to call the patient. And, with psychotherapy, it is okay, you got something that isn't quite the way you want it to be. I'm going to teach you how to, you know, get back to or get to where you want to be, even if you've never been there before. So the power structure is slightly different. That may be why in most of this modern world of everything's on the internet, all the courses and all those things you can take are all self-regulated, and most coaching is way more popular than psychotherapy. I'm not going to put my oar in the water of which one's better or not. Different strokes for different folks, different things for different problems. But psychotherapy is also an option um, for helping learn to identify triggers and control them better, and that sort of thing. So, mindfulness, meditation, coaching, psychotherapy, journaling is also helpful. If you've never tried that, journaling is just, you got a little notebook of some kind and you just write down thoughts for the day. It does not have to be any, like you're planning a campaign or anything. You're just trying, thinking about, oh, I felt great today. Love those blueberry pancakes, whatever, you just, for some reason, when you write stuff down and then you can reread it, you get some distance from it, and it's an easier way to analyze uh, emotions. If that's the issue, uh, you see what you write down, and you're not right there. It's not still in your head. It's down on the piece of paper, and you get a little distance from it, and you can evaluate it more objectively. And it's really helpful. So, for pretty much everybody, I would recommend learning how to meditate, do something that is, in the calm down, get centered kind of area. Do some journaling on your own. Do some every day. And then the last thing would be that you might want to find yourself a coach and learn how to use that to get to the things you want to get to. I'm not going to kid anybody. I've been doing this kind of work for like 40 plus years, and having an ADHD is tough, even if you know what's going on. And a lot of ADHDers don't know what's going on and how to react to it and that sort of thing. And a lot of the parents don't know, what do I do with this kid? He's out of control. She's out of control. And my dad thinks I'm a terrible father, and all those kinds of things that I'm sure folks out there are familiar with. So it's, even if you know exactly what's going on, there are going to be days that aren't going to work out well. I mean, there just are. It's genetic. It's biochemical. It's not a behavior problem. It just sometimes looks like one. And so you've got to be ready, willing, and able to deal with it. I mean, you just have to. Yeah, I think in the not too distant future, I'm going to do a big thing on stress management for parents, ADHD parents. Okay, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras. This is ADHD Chat with Dr. G. I'm trying to change that around a little bit. I've been told I should. Anyway, and my website is terrygingrasphd.com. I do coaching, so you want an ADHD coach? I'm me, and I'm here. You can get in touch with me through my website. I have a Calendly account, and I sometimes can make sense out of Calendly, sometimes not so much. But okay, next week we will do session 4, which we'll surprise ourselves with what that turns out to be. Okay, I will catch you next time. Thank you for paying attention, and see you later.